no one 2020'd harder than Zohran Mamdani. Police abolition is queer liberation.
Flipping off statues while wearing the COVID
Yeah.
latex gloves.
There'll be no policing except for people who haven't masked and vaxxed.
Politically, it was super smart of him not to bring up any of those. Now.
My statements in 2020 were ones made at the murder of George Floyd.
He is running as far away from that as he possibly can. But again, it was 4 years ago.
Robbie.
Yes.
Are you a socialist?
Am I a socialist?
Yeah.
Are we in one of these 20 people things where I'm going to be
surrounded?
Attacked?
Yeah.
Debate me, bro culture. I am very much not a socialist.
Okay. As someone who's not a socialist,
yes,
I want you to give me the most charitable read you can for what it looks like Zohran becoming the next mayor of New York City.
I can do that. I think the charitable read has nothing to do with his political views and just has to do with the fact that he seems like a nice-ish person.
With a good smile.
He's nice. I think very misguided in what he thinks, but nice. And he was up against Andrew Cuomo, who I despise, who ruled over New York during an epic catastrophe. It was initially lauded for having handled it well until we, opened the curtain a little bit and saw that he, like others, had nursing home policies of sending sick people back out of the hospital to nursing homes that got people killed. He was not the only one to make that mistake, but he then wrote a book about how good he did, and the deaths of tons of people was inconvenient for that, and he tried to cover it up. He directed his staff to mislead the public about the extent of that being bad. That's a pretty appalling wrongdoing to me, not 20 years ago or 10 years ago, but like in very living memory.
Years ago, yeah.
So the idea that the audacity he had to try to return to public life so quickly from that makes me not exactly. I'm happy to see him humiliated. That brings me joy. And Mamdani hasn't done anything wrong to me yet. I'm sure that will change. I don't live in New York, so I don't suffer his policies that much. But
I do, and I have.
So maybe you feel differently. And I think his policies will be very bad. But also some of the things they've gone after him for, when you're a little unfairly attacked, I go, well, that's kind of nothing. Initially, when he gave his response about not going to visit Israel, he's like, well, I'm running to be
the mayor of
New York.
City.
Who cares? Yeah. That's such a stupid question. I think when he said about globalize the intifada or downplayed the significance of that statement, I thought that was bad. So there's plenty of things I'm willing to call him out for, including his awful policies. But he's not Cuomo.
What is the, I want to say, ground up energy here, if not for actual socialism that is propping up Zohran?
I don't think it's for socialism. And maybe there's left-wing people who, they always think, look, they had their moment, which I can appreciate because I'm a libertarian, and we had what we thought was a political moment from like 2010 to 2014. That was when the Tea Party wave, Ron Paul came to major significant national prominence running for president. Rand Paul got in the Senate. Republicans were running to cut government spending. We thought the Republican Party was pivoting, away from cultural issues because the gay marriage fight had just been won and they didn't want to talk about social issues. They just want to talk about government spending. The big public battle was against Obama on Obamacare and just expansion of government in general and bailouts and things. And even with bailouts, there was some unity of left and right people saying, well, the system is kind of rigged against you, but here's how the government does it. That was our great moment. Then Donald Trump comes in, and it's not that Donald Trump is completely and universally in every way not a libertarian. He has a foreign policy that is somewhat more libertarian than where the Republican Party was. But because he is neither libertarian nor anti-libertarian, he just crashed that moment. It was no longer, he was not defined in opposition or toward. So it just exited the conversation. Socialism had its moment of the Democratic Socialists of America raising a lot of money, Bernie Sanders, AOC, lots of write-ups in the press, lots of attention, and then the movement the media moment has receded. And so I think they're seeing in him and saying, does this mean our moment is coming back? And I doubt it, is my quick summary of where it's going.
To me, this felt like such a narrative violation, specifically because people were obsessed with all the vibe shift conversation, especially post-Trump November. and it felt like the conversation was shifting towards how the country is getting more conservative. The country is actually shifting its opinions on all things immigration, culture, trade, what have you. And then Zohran kind of felt like a checkmate to that conversation. Is it? Am I like over-indexing it? Or
I mean, it's New York.
Yeah.
It's a very democratic in a democratic controlled area, heavily democratic area. Can a left faction overpower an incredibly unpopular and divisive, more moderate figure? Well, yes. I don't think that. I'm not trying to be naive. I'm not sure that says anything about the national mood. And again, now I think it is a lesson to the more moderate faction of the Democratic Party, or the more neoliberal or abundance-friendly or whatever it is, that to beat left-wing populism or left-wing socialism, you have to have candidates who are young and charismatic and appealing. And there should be nothing novel about that lesson. That's just like the lesson of politics. You have to have somebody that put ideas aside, somebody that is likable.
Yeah.
And Cuomo doesn't have that. And Mamdani does, and maybe that will change when we learn more about him. But these people, if they're going to defeat the AOCs and the Bernies and whatever comes next, they have to invest in identifying talent that's just, you would like them.
Speaking of talent within DNC, obviously there's a lot of kerfuffle, and for some reason Rahm Emanuel is back in everyone's radar, and the elders are coming back to say what the DNC should be in opposition to Trump and actually learning the right lessons. What do you think are the right lessons, and what do you think are the wrong lessons?
You know, these older people in the Democratic Party who've run it for forever and will point to, like, look what Bill Clinton did that was so successful. That's not politically relevant to our experience right now. Like, American politics is just too fundamentally different from what it was like in the 90s.
Can we stick on that? Because that was a talking
James
point.
Carville is a smart. Look, I have nothing against him, and I'm in you know, when he chides woke excesses, I'm sure I agree with him, and it's probably right, but he has nothing to, like, his experience in the 90s has nothing to say about what will work in today's environment. It just doesn't. We were fundamentally different politics. And like Bill Clinton, who these people hold up as a sterling example, is not even someone today's younger Democrats even like a little bit. They want him to go away. They were like, why are you still bringing out this person? Now, there was something you probably watched the Hunter Biden podcast where it's enjoyable listening to him rail against, you know, the Obama bros. They didn't know anything. They just were luckily associated with I
love how you just call Pod Save Obama bros.
Right. That's what I put, you know, when I write scripts now for my show, that's what I call them. And yeah, they benefited from being attached to a charismatic, effective political figure. Of course, so did Joe Biden. Yeah. So I don't know what Hunter's trying to say there, and he doesn't know anything either. None of these people know anything.
What do you think is, like, to the lesson point, you said James Carville, Obama, Clinton, like, their reality is not, quote unquote, our reality. Meaning we live in a very different economic time with different realities, and the talking points are like, people can't afford houses, no one can get married, people are drowning in student debt, you are one punctured tire away from bankruptcy and all of that. Yeah. So your political solutions do not make any sense to me. What is the counter to that without going full capital S socialism?
Well, I think you would say that, you know, you start by acknowledging that while not everything is getting worse, you know, those kinds of, everything's so much worse now. If you actually, then you look at statistics and you say, well, but homes are bigger on average and people's TVs are nicer. Argument, which ends up being true. And it's worse, you know, in the city, in the enclaves where liberals like to congregate, where, it's really unaffordable in New York, in D.C., in L.A., but there's this vast interior of the country where you can have a good job and afford a home, and it's still, like, the American dream still exists there. That said, because of, I would say, government policy and the stranglehold that the boomers have had on our government for forever, you can have tax and regulatory policy that is more favorable to people who've already accrued wealth, to the elderly. It's harder to buy a home because housing supply is artificially constricted by the government. You know, young people have to pay into entitlements and Social Security, and we're paying for the health care of people who now live 20 years longer on average than they used to. Not exactly, but living a lot longer past retirement than they used to, for a low quality of life that's very expensive because of our weird healthcare system where it's like subsidized and there's so much price confusion, you don't know what you pay for. It's not a proper market because it's partly subsidized, but it's not entirely government run. It's just the worst of all worlds. I'm not an expert on this, but it's bad. We all recognize that it's bad. And so a lot of, I would say, wealth is being confiscated from young people. Or just the circumstances being difficult to them. They're delaying starting families, and that is partly a result of policies, and I think you should be upset about that, and you should be mad at, even in a bipartisan basis. I'm all about not class war, but like generational war a little bit should be a bigger talking point about how many of our policies supported by both Republicans and Democrats just favor older people. And they've had their time to accrue tons of wealth. Somebody, you know that Nick Adams guy?
Yeah.
He's Australian, right? He's now the representative to Malaysia or something. I don't know. He's just loves steak.
The alpha male guy, yeah.
Loves steak and Hooters and, crikey, a rare steak.
Why are we talking about him?
Because he had some tweet the other day that was like, why do people have to pay, who've owned their house for however, have to pay property tax at all?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, another benefit to people who bought houses when it cost like peanuts to do it, and that's where government policy is going to favor people. That's that kind of thing that makes me want to just,
And that feels like a bipartisan issue at this moment, but I still want you to answer the question.
Yeah.
What is the specific counter to that without sounding like a socialist? Because I can very easily take what you just said and make it sound like he hates rich people and wants to take people's money away.
No, I don't hate rich people. I don't hate anyone. I dislike how older Americans have rigged the system against us. Not rich people, but older people. And so we need to deregulate, get the government not involved in childcare. I think I brought up this example on this show before of DC trying to require childcare workers to have like a graduate master's degree in education or something. It's so stupid. It's just protection that makes the cost of childcare expensive. And if childcare costs too much and housing costs too much and education costs too much, you're gonna rent forever and not get married and not have kids. But that's just policy that can be changed. It's not anti-capitalism. It's not anti-rich people. It's for those things. It's for innovation and for markets. We need to get the government out of the way. And the Democrats will never do that, which is why I don't support them.
Why do you think they will never do that?
Because what their constituency increasingly is old people. I mean, even after the last election, now it's really changed because younger people moved toward the Republican Party in droves, and so their party is increasingly like older Americans, women more likely in general,
the white liberals
and black women, and so they're going to have more. I mean, you hear they shriek whenever anyone says like, well, could we reform Medicare a little bit? Could we even look for waste, fraud, and abuse? What about working requirements? And they all set their hairs on fire.
I think like that previous popular sentiment, when the Big Beautiful Bill passed, there was a lot of pushback from people like, I don't know, like Bhatia Ungar, who were saying that, I like Trump and all of that. However, this bill is kind of like a fuck you, especially because it takes Medicaid away from a lot of people while giving tax cut to the rich. Why is that same sentiment permeating across both the parties?
Yeah, I mean, Bhatia is a very dear friend of mine. We do a show together now for the Two-Way platform. Yeah. It's great. We are super close. We agree on some things. We totally disagree on economic policy and what aspects of Trump. Like, the things about Trump that I like are the opposite from the things that she likes. Yeah. We're so far apart on the economic stuff. She and people of the economic right, NatCon, whatever we're calling it, they think that government policy should try to make it so that the sort of manufacturing job you had in the 40s, 50s, 60s, you could still have here for exactly that kind of pay, and it would be great, and it would not face competition from overseas or from migrant labor, for anything like that. They want to use policy to structure the country like that. I think it's naive. I don't think it can be done. I think the amount of economic pain it would cause to try to get us there is just everyone will revolt when the price of everything goes up. That's the number one complaint of voters every time. Price of things is too expensive. Yeah. Well, if you constrict the labor supply and you start trying to tell people where they got to have their factories and which raw materials they can buy, which countries they can buy from, what's a fair price, what's not, the more of that you do, the more you distract the economy, and it happens every time. Every time. It's every experiment in having more government direction of here's what bricks should cost. Here's where you can buy lumber. Here's, all the Settlers of Catan little pieces. You can only trade 2 sheep for 2 grain. Every time that happens, you get depression and eventually famine and starvation and death. And then you get political repression in order to keep that system in place. It's not good.
I think it's fair to say more and more young people are moving populist these days. And they're being told if they're on the right, it's all about protectionism, that America needs to be protected from immigration, trade. If you're on the left, the populist solution is socialism, meaning basically redistributionism. So on one hand, you have protectionism, and on the other hand, you have redistribution. What is the sober solution?
Well, we got to have some kind of immigration screening for sure. I take almost I think the crime and national security immigration arguments more seriously than the economic arguments, which I find are just
Can you lay that down?
Yeah, we are a nation. I'm a libertarian, but I don't think there should be no government. The government can do some things. The purpose of government, if you in like a very basic, Lockean Enlightenment sense, is to protect us from violence. The government has a monopoly on protecting you from violence, mostly. So we get to have some screening. We should stop terrorists from coming to this country. We should stop gang-affiliated people from coming to this country. We can do some kind of monitoring and screening to make sure that not just anyone can come to this country, but that they are not going to harm others, they don't have violent associations. So that's the protection on your actual life. I would not say that the government's role is to protect you from market-based competition for your labor. That is not a legitimate role of government to me. So the fact that someone is going to do this job for less is not a reason for the government to say, well, they shouldn't be able to come.
And the pushback to that is the government's job is to take care of the national interest.
Right.
And in that interest, if a lot of Americans do not have jobs because of immigrants, jobs going away, what have you, then the government has to step in.
Right. But it falls apart because if you take that to its natural conclusion, what's the limiting principle on that argument, right? Because everyone, in terms of labor, faces competition from every new technological development. Like we're not horse and buggy repairmen have been driven out of, that job was
creative
erased
destruction
by creative destruction. So I want to always understand, well, what's the limiting principle? If you're saying in this market, we can't allow the labor to be undercut, even though that will make the product, whatever it is, more expensive for all Americans. We're going to protect a specific industry from competition. Okay, but why? What is the limiting principle there? If you do that, if you just keep doing that, then you have the government saying, forbidding prosperity.
What if the limiting principle is immigration?
Then we have to deal with higher prices to everything. I would rather, even if we're going to use government to solve this issue, it seems to me that then the better way is just to do some kind of universal basic income or direct cash payment. If this is such a problem and we've decided the government has to do something about it, is people losing out economic opportunity due to competition, well, then we should, but this will make society more prosperous. So then a part of that prosperity is confiscated via taxes and paid back to people. Would be better than having the government tinker with the economy itself and working the knobs and levers and saying this much native employment in this sector. They don't know. That's how markets work. The government cannot centrally plan and say this is the right amount of resources in all of these things. You have to let the market decide that. And if you let the market decide that, you create tons more wealth, which then, depending on how much of a state you're willing, how big you think the government should be, then you can say, of that increased in prosperity, you can confiscate some of it from the top earners and pay it back to people who've been negatively impacted, the people at the margins, hopefully, who've been very negatively impacted by the free market, then you can pay it back to them. Is better than having the government hold back all of economic development just to stop the horse and buggy repairman from having competition from, Ford.
The irony of that is someone on the left, like Zohran, has a solution which kind of echoes similar theory vis-a-vis, taking more money from top income earners in New York City and rent control. Staying on rent control specifically, there's this narrative of landlords and vilifying them.
It's really bad. And it's just a terrible thing.
And
to have them, to be clear, to have them vilified to this degree. I think.
Because the the caricature of a landlord is that of a fat cat.
Yeah.
Is that of BlackRock.
Yeah.
As reality is, in New York specifically, most landlords are just mom and pop landlords who live in Jersey or Queens, first generation, second generation immigrants who bought their first house and now it's up for rent. What do you think like that energy is of like shitting on landlords?
I mean, I don't really understand it. There's a practical argument against rent control and also just kind of like a moral argument. And to me, the moral argument on itself is very compelling that like you own this.
Yeah.
What right does the government have to say these are the terms at which you could let someone live in the property you own? I don't understand. It's mine though. What if I want to charge whatever $500 a month for it and you're willing to pay that? It's like I consent, you consent. Why does a third party, the government, get to say no? That voluntary exchange, your money to live in that room, I am not consenting to the government. It just doesn't make any moral sense to me. And then practically what it results in is shortages, because then people, if you constrain the circumstances at which people can rent out a dwelling, they think, well, I'm not going to rent it. This isn't economically worth it to me because you've set a cap. Then you have shortages. We've just had a real world experiment in this where Javier Milei, my boy, based Javier Milei in Argentina, doing everything I want, got rid of the rent control prices and rent control policies, and there is objectively more housing availability than there's like ever been before. It's great.
What do you think the hate is, though? What is I want you to verbalize the hate towards landlords. It's not just I'm trying to make like a bootlicking argument.
Yeah.
I'm making an argument based on my personal experience. When I first moved to New York City, my landlord was this Chinese dude who lived in Jersey, and
you hate Chinese people.
I hate it. Just, God damn it.
Yeah.
And I used to live in his, I don't know, like 5 apartments. It was like a brownstone, and most New York apartments are just that.
Yeah.
And the argument is that if you're pushing for policies which are favorable towards landlords, somehow this is a bootlicking argument.
Yeah. I know people say that. And look, I've had bad landlords before.
Yeah.
It's not like a class of people. It's just some people are bad and some people are good. And you're right. Sometimes they don't fix things you want them to fix. I've mostly dealt with not like independent landlords, but large management companies.
Yeah.
I've lived in like very modern buildings in DC where it's a giant corporation that owns it. And then usually they actually have someone managing it.
Yeah.
They have one of those
Property
3 management
types.
companies that are not the best, in my view.
Yeah.
But I actually just did this. I had to renew my lease.
Yeah.
And the building offered me a massive, steep increase to stay. It was so outrageous. It was outrageous.
Yeah.
I said, literally, this is outrageous and I won't pay it. And I countered, and then they countered, and we went back and forth. And now I am agreeing to live in the building for another year and a half based on what they want to charge me. And if it was not meeting if I was not satisfied with it, I would go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like that's, you
the
can
good old
do that.
market. Yeah.
You got to move with your feet.
What do you think the real world implications of Zohran's policies would be? Because I'll be honest, it seems like he will win.
Probably will win.
Yeah.
The economic policies, I'm not sure how much damage he can do. I guess if I was a New Yorker, I would be most concerned about the police situation because I'm not the biggest fan of Eric Adams. And again, I don't want, aggressive stop and frisk style policing, but, we did experience a pandemic related crime spike, and DC has had policing shortages that have really let crime in some ways get out of control. It's much better now. I would worry, and it seems like Eric Adams did some good things in terms of, or I don't know if it's his responsibility or not, but the trajectory of crime in New York is good. I would worry about that becoming very undone by just a totally inexperienced person who doesn't have a good pre-existing relationship with the police and whose 2020 tweets are somewhat. My friend Tim Carney at the Washington Examiner had some headline about no one 2020'd harder than Zohran Mamdani. And if you go back, it's like, police abolition is queer liberation, or so, that kind of just utter 2020
flipping off
gobbledygook.
statues while wearing the COVID latex gloves.
Yeah. There'll be no policing except for people who haven't masked and vaxxed appropriately to enter buildings. The only policing can be of the vax non-compliant.
But politically, it was super smart of him not to bring up any of those in this
now.
Now.
Oh, now he is running as far away from that as he possibly can. But again, it was 4 years ago. You can read all the tweets.
What does that say about the populist base?
I think even the socialist left type people understand that the police, anti-police sloganing or Black Lives Matter, or very identity politics kind of liberalism is the most toxically unpopular aspect of their message. It's much more unpopular than their kind of far left economic ideas, which are open to some measure of debate, particularly if you don't call them socialism.
Yeah.
Like if you say
Socialism
it's socialized
light.
medicine, nobody wants that. If it's the Affordable Care Act, people
Yeah.
do. Also, public opinion is just so all over the place these days on everything. Like, I can't even tell if the Trump immigration policies, honestly, are
Yeah.
popular or not. I feel like I see a poll
I think they're popular
every
within
other
the
day
base, yeah.
where, like, everyone supports what's being done, and then I see another one where, like, no, they're totally against it. I don't know. I think it's how
I've
it's
never
asked.
gotten a single phone call for a poll ever. I
Yeah.
still do not know how that stuff works. I'll be 100% honest.
Oh, I get come election time, they still think I'm a Michigan voter because I'm from Michigan. I get lots of texts and lots of calls. They
I get
wanna
the
know my
text, but I
opinion.
never get the poll call because I would love for someone to just ask
I've
me
gotten
questions. Yeah.
I've gotten them, and I'm like, you gotta tune in to Rising or Free Media or Two Way or one of any of the other.
Give me a click. If you want to take, I need a click. Shifting gears a little bit, as someone on the right, question mark.
Yes.
I love this conversation of boundary setting
Mm-hmm.
because it was very obvious how the left suffered because of a lack of a boundary setting, especially for the LGBTQ movement. When the conversation went from the LGB to the LGBTQ, a lot of people kind of
Clearly.
got uncomfortable. And that pattern permeated across the left. On the right specifically, what do you think is the proper boundary setting? And the reason I'm asking that because of the Jubille interview and the clips of it, because for a lot of people, that interview and the people in that debate would be their first example of what the new MAGA right looks like.
You know, it's interesting and a little concerning, yes. Now, I am as against cancel culture as anyone. I've spent years writing against cancel culture. I'm generally against people getting fired for their political views. But there's a bunch of criteria, I would say, that come in that to my mind, it's a bunch of things that, depending on how many of these things you check off, I'm more sympathetic to you or you're less sympathetic. You know, if you don't have a public-facing role and you're not a public person and you said something in private, I don't think you should be fired. Or if you said it as an adolescent, or just adolescent behavior in general should be ignored. If it's high school or before, we should practice broad forgiveness. Young people, especially young men, are still learning how to socialize and behave around other people. That's wrong. On the other hand, if you sign up to go on a provocative debate show now, and so you can proclaim your opinion, and you say you seem very much to underplay how bad the Holocaust was, and you endorse fascism, I don't like you could be fired. That's a risk you should have anticipated. I think. Now, if you say that, well, why can't I say that I'm a fascist, but somebody who says they're a socialist is not shamed in the same way? There, I'm gonna have some, commonality with you. I don't know why it is the case, even though socialism as a government and political system has killed millions of people, just like fascism. It is weird, but socialism is cooler, more hip. They don't like. It has more.
It
credence.
doesn't have like the dark albatross of this weird guy named Hitler.
It should,
it
but
should, yeah.
but it doesn't. So I agree that that's unfair.
Yeah.
There is more. There's more anti-Semitism, just in existence than I thought there was. To be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah. Oof.
I don't change my mind a lot.
Yeah.
But I was a couple of years ago. If you'd produced which happens all the time, there'll be a new statistic or new poll that anti-Semitism has risen this much, I would have just been like, I don't believe that. I said that was an activist-derived poll or something. And maybe that's still the case, but there's certainly more of it than I thought. That could be tethered to what's happening in the news, where a country known for being the country of Jewish people is engaged in a war that is, at present, causing a lot of starvation of innocent people and is pretty awful to watch, regardless of what your opinion of the greater conflict and what should be done. I am maybe alone in the world and thinking it's a very complicated situation and not totally sure what can be done to sort it out, which makes me just think America should be as uninvolved as possible, because I don't think there are easy answers and both sides are kind of unreasonable. But it's awful to watch, and I think that is raising some anti-Semitism.
I think the horseshoe theory is no longer a theory, if you ask me, especially for this particular phenomena. And for the people on, let's call them progressives, it has always been about the oppressor-oppressed argument, and Israel, the bigger quasi-Western country, is always the bad guy because they have power, and that's how they view the world, right? So
it's an argument I hate.
Yeah, I know, but that's the
yeah,
Marxist cultural argument,
right?
And which is why they will always take the side of the quote-unquote little guy, in this case, Palestine.
Right. They're always reacting.
Correct.
Israel, the U.S. is the
bad guy.
the mover. Everything they do that's not good is just in reaction, which I think is just a totally unfair and limiting way to look at world conflict.
And on the right, they hate Israel because of a very different reason.
Yeah.
It's not that their hearts bleed for the plight of the starving child in Gaza.
Right.
It's, what is it?
Well, I mean, I think some of it, like I listen to when Tucker talks about the situation, and I mostly agree with his views on foreign policy of the Middle East. And I think he does find this level of children dying and of Christians being killed there. That's something that is clearly motivating people on the right from I've noticed this a lot in Catholic, the Catholic right, which is usually people who converted to Catholicism later in life. I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school. So I have Catholics, it's like my home team. It's like my culture. I'm not particularly religious myself. I have a healthy enough distance from it. Whereas if you convert to it later in life, it becomes your entire personality.
Yeah, oh my God.
Is what I realized.
You're touching on
but
something
I am
very
favorably
sensitive. Let's
Catholic.
You're saying you don't have the little Catholic flag on your Twitter bio,
Right.
and it's not the cultural, whatever. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's get back to the Tucker
But
thing.
the right, it's that. It's concern for the Christians there. And it's, and it's not wanting, and I think this is reasonable, not wanting our foreign policy to be hijacked by any other country. I mean, the lesson of the aughts is that everything the neocons thought was a little bit disastrous and didn't pan out, and we want to be less involved, not more. And I think there's a healthy distrust of anyone trying to leverage identity politics to say, we're obligated to help these people for this reason or that reason, or this country for this reason or that reason, when it hasn't been debated and discussed in our own government.
But in both the camps, I think it is fair to say there's a pretty prevalent strain of anti-Semitism.
Yes. Well, and that came through in that Jubille interview where they started I don't know why, again, not to keep from a Catholic perspective, the church helped shield Jewish people. The church was persecuted by the Nazis. Hitler was not he was a pagan.
Yeah.
He was not a defender of Christian values. He believed in this Nordic pagan kind of that Mussolini thought was preposterous and insane, but it was not Christian at all. So there's no reason
blood
to
supremacy kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's no reason to retcon it into being something we need to
stand for,
or be this is our team, the way that some people do with the Confederacy or something. This is even more obviously not something that needs to be defended by Christians.
My concern right now is that it's not. I'm not trying to make a platforming argument here at all. My whole concern right now is that if you go on Twitter, which might sound like, it's a siloed social media, who gives a fuck? But that's where literally politicians are scrolling to see what the takes are, and if majority of the takes are being scaffolded because Twitter has this weird economy where more engagements equals more money equals you being able to pay your rent. So why the fuck should I not post the edgiest shit ever?
Right.
That is concerning.
Right. Well, yeah. Whenever I say something in real life that's a little bit controversial or on my show, I'm I gotta remember to tweet that. Because I have the monetization on. Gotta get paid. But look, the platform is owned by Elon, who has a very specific ideological viewpoint that mostly aligns with mine, is not anti-Semitic whatsoever.
No, it's
he
just
is
free
absolutely
speech,
not.
absolutism,
And his view is that should be allowed to be out there. And I agree with it, because certainly these kinds of people, like that young man who got fired as the result of the Jubille interview, trying to muzzle them or keep them down or saying you can't express this view is just totally going to backfire and be unhealthy and is not the way to address it. I don't think Mehdi Hassan shrieking at you that you're a Nazi is the way to address it either. I don't think I've ever been in a debate with Mehdi Hassan, but I've watched him debate others, and it has made me every single time more sympathetic to the other person because it's just kind of pathologically unfair. He had that book, Win Every Argument.
Oh my God, who writes
host
a book?
a show, invite someone on, and then talk over them. you will win every argument, I
The
guess.
end.
So that's definitely not the solution
Yeah.
either. But, Charlie Kirk has been doing kind of focus group or engagements
Campus,
on this
yeah,
topic.
yeah.
He had Dave Smith and one of the more pro-Israel people arguing, Josh Hammer, and I thought it was a good debate. And so I think there are people who are handling this correctly.
Yeah.
And having what I would say are weird or appalling kind of identity-based grievances or hatreds, or having that be your personality, seems to be something most people grow out of. It's like a phase you go through.
Yeah.
And I think that will be the case.
I think there's also this resentment in the new right towards, I don't know, the Bill Buckley-esque conservatism, the three-legged stool and all of that. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I think there is. Well, I get the foreign policy being just really appalling under the way that the right used to be. And the new right, the people who come to Trump from listening to podcasts, from listening to Joe Rogan and Vaughn and Andrew Schultz and all these people, I don't think they want mass deportation either. I don't think they want, war with Iran.
Who doesn't want?
Young
The
people
base,
in
okay,
general.
yeah.
I think that's more of an old people watching conservative cable news thing. That they came in here illegal. They gotta get out, wait their turn, or even if that takes 30
Forever.
years and it's
Yeah.
not literally not possible. Okay, I don't think anyone is there really public support for every single person who had entered the country illegally to have to go. How do we even do that? We need a massive government surveillance.
Have you not heard of the alligator Alcatraz, Robbie?
Right, surround them with alligators, which is just kind of I don't want them tortured either. I don't. It's not. No, we have to stop before we're gonna sound like libs again. We can't. Do this.
We did that before.
Can't do this. Young new right people. Yeah, they didn't like the bow tie conservatism of the Buckley era. And they'll also say, some people on the right will say, well, that was also an era where the right was not nearly as successful as it is now.
Yeah,
so
because they sucked at doing media.
Right, whatever
Yeah.
we're doing now is working.
In terms of content and media.
Yes,
But-
in terms of a media, well, and in some extent in terms of wielding political power, yes.
Yeah, but power is different than actually asking people, what do you believe in? And I think a lot of this is being driven by quote-unquote edgelord culture, which is what was most of those people at the debate. And I am still looking for that voice in right, which kind of resembles the same, I don't want to say Bill Buckley version, because I will be called a neocon, but I'm saying it's okay to be populist, it's okay to be neocon, but shed off this identitarian nonsense.
Yeah. Read Milton Friedman, or listen to Milton Friedman. Watch Ayn Rand. This is how I would steer people. Look at what Javier Milei is doing. Read The Road to
keep
Serfdom.
going back to Javier Milei, I love it.
Look at political people of the right, of some faction of the right, who had I think very smart things to say, and from whom we can learn a lot. The intellectualism of it is certainly not worth discarding at all. It should continue to be foundational to the right. But I don't want to be some old fogey just complaining. Kids these days they don't have their pocket constitution anymore. No, it's just a different media world, and it allows for more people to get attention for saying provocative shit. And that's just the way it's going to be, and it doesn't necessarily always mean anything.
Speaking of different media world, Robbie, you work in media.
Yes.
Do you think you would have a job if you lost your company $40 million?
Absolutely not.
Why do you think that so many people are
my God,
shocked
Mr. Colbert.
and calling Trump a dictator because apparently it's his fault that Colbert got fired?
I love the idea that conspiracy theories are only something that the right believes in, and good, upstanding, right-thinking, liberal, progressive people would never believe in something that lacks any and all evidence. This is a perfect example. There is no, some could emerge, but starting from the hypothesis, the most likely reason they would cancel the show and still leave him on the air for 10 months, not canceling him immediately.
No, yeah, he's hanging out.
It's losing $40 million. It has a staff of 200 people.
Jesus.
He's paid $20 million or something. That's 200 people for a daily television show that's
It's
1 hour.
bonkers.
That's a lot. I think I could do it with 5.
I think Emily.
pretty
I
crazy.
think this is Emily's point. She was talking about how you cannot build a show which has macro budget but micro influence. A lot of these people are fighting for the same views which people on YouTube are.
Yes.
However, their whole business has an overhead of, a fucking Paramount
Yes.
or CBS, like movie budgets.
Yes.
And you're getting same amount of views, which, I don't know, Joe Rogan is getting, or any other podcaster is getting, whose staff is, I don't know, 2 people who run the camera and 1 editor.
It's just quaint. If you watch the show, it's on late at night.
It's also not good.
There's a studio audience that laughs. That's just not the
It's not
way
good.
people want to consume content anymore. The market has decided, and we don't like that product as much. We want to listen to people in the internet in a setup like this talking for like 3 hours, and it's conversational and it's funny and you care about the person. This sort of topical humor with a laugh track that's interrupted by commercials every couple minutes is just an inferior mode of entertainment and news delivery compared to what the internet has made possible, right? It's just a market loser.
It's still a shame, if you ask me, like as like a media fan in general, to see what happened to late night. In general, when do you think this whole late nightification became all things politics and anti-Trump?
Yeah, I mean, it became entirely anti-Trump. It became less smart or interesting. Like Jon Stewart, if you go back to, the aughts, he was, during the Iraq War, he did feel like essential viewing. He was interesting, and he is funny. And even today, you know what he's going to say most of the time, but every now and then he has a take that will surprise you. And he's interesting and he's original. It's the originality, the uniqueness of the voice that matters. Colbert could be replaced, and Fallon and Kimmel don't have. John Oliver is very funny. I don't agree with him at all.
He also does
I think the
deep
arguments he
dives.
makes are sometimes very unfair, but they are well assembled, they are smart, and they are funny. It is funny. Colbert's just not that funny. I don't know what to say. It's not smarter than that. It's not that.
The product is bad.
And you know what it's going to be every time. You know it's going to be making fun of Trump the way, again, a liberal white woman in a Facebook group. Drumpf? Did you know his name is Drumpf? It's cringe.
It's the tote bag NPR mom.
It's TDS.
Yeah.
It's not good.
I have faith that
Maybe it was on during the daytime while older white women were at
after
home.
View. Yeah.
It would do fine. It would only lose $36 million.
Shifting gears, you got engaged.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
What do you think, and you can give me as much or as little context as you want, with your engagement as the central piece of this, where do you think social conservatism lies today?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I got engaged. It was news for some reason on social media. I don't understand why everyone's so crazy. I'm a private person. I'm not going to say anything else about it, but people can look if they want. I don't know why anyone cares about this. Social conservatism is certainly not dead as a force in the right at all. And there has clearly been a backlash and issues that it seemed that even people who, for instance, cared about, or people who were very against gay marriage were willing to concede defeat on that issue for a period of years. And for some the backlash to wokeness has been so total that it's allowed for people who also want to go back and relitigate some of the culture wars of the 90s and aughts that were lost by conservatives. They're saying, well, wait a minute, we have liberalism in a cultural wokeness, cancel culture, DEI, some of the trans related excesses, they're all in retreat. So now is our time to say, actually, we are going to push to ban abortion. Actually, we are going to undo gay marriage. So that effort is underway. I think there would be an electoral backlash to it in some places. I mean, again, the kind of person who listens to Joe Rogan and
the
Theo
Barstool
Vaughn
conservative,
and the Barstool conservatives are like, what? That is the thing that rattles them the most when you start saying that, no, the right actually does want to ban abortion. Now, as a libertarian, I am fine on, as I try to plot my way forward on very debated cultural issues, is to mostly just do states' rights and mostly say that, okay, if you have a very red state and they want to have this policy, this is what the policies should be, and they can vote on that and people can live somewhere else if they don't like it.
Yeah.
When we, massively disagree. So on abortion, I was not personally having any problem with Roe v. Wade being overturned. I don't think there's a right to an abortion in the Constitution, which was the Roe Supreme Court decision. This just said that on this issue in which there is tremendous disagreement, and even I disagree on this issue, or I have arguments with people who I agree with on 99% of things on this issue. I change my mind on it. It's a difficult one. It should just be to the states to say that in this state we say it's 10 weeks, in this one we say it's 20, in this one we say it's in these circumstances, and the country gets to decide what's best. So if social conservatives can live with that, I think that could be fine.
How do you think social conservatism got defined or redefined in MAGA? Because the irony is that Trump, by
is
all
not a social conservative
measures, is not a social conservative.
But is most liked
by social
conservatives.
What do you think that's
If you go back to the three-legged stool,
yeah,
it's the neocons hate him the most.
Yeah.
And it's kind of economic libertarian people are kind of divided on him, frankly. And then social conservative people love him. They love him. They say
it's
that
a means to an end thing.
Yeah, they say that he was he was chosen, divinely chosen to do this. And they don't seem to be too upset about what they've gotten out of him. I think they're very satisfied. And in some sense they should be. They got Roe v. Wade overturned, which has been the social conservative goal forever.
In that same vein, what do you think Trump's genius is specifically? Because even Trump's populist argument has that same pattern, which is cosmetically he is signaling that I'm for the working man. Right. I'm one of you guys. However, he is as much of an elite as anyone gets. What do you think the genius is? Why do people who quote unquote have nothing in common with him still find him appealing and one of the good guys?
Because he's just a world-class, interesting, engaging person. You can just, there's something about his expression and his behavior that is
talks
captivating.
like a New Yorker, yeah.
It's more that he's just content.
Yeah,
he is in an era where content is all that matters.
Yeah,
he is the number one. Some people lend themselves more naturally to appearing in meme format.
Yeah,
and he is the number one person at that. He's of him. The dance he does,
the
looks
Jerome
he does.
Powell thing?
Yes, everything is funny. It's always funny. And so he's just been a presence in our lives for that reason. I think the appeal begins there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he has good political instincts on what to emphasize. Because he's won the war over the Republican Party for control of it so thoroughly. Now, when people disagree, and they do disagree within the tent, but it's not disagreement with Trump. It's they're trying to sell Trump on, we should do this. What about giving immigrants who are college graduates, what about them getting some kind of green card so they can stay in the country and not go back to their native country? How about that, President Trump?
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a good idea. I'll consider that. And someone else will say, but then they're going to compete, so we don't want this for this reason. And I go, oh, okay, well, maybe not then. It's a battle for his attention, but it's not ever against him.
Saying no to his policy now.
Because he's just won to that degree.
What do you think MAGA looks like post-Trump?
Yeah, that's $1 million question. It probably is somewhat similar.
Yeah.
I think J.D. Vance is the successor, barring unusual circumstances. J.D. Vance is not like Trump sort of in his behavior or his character or his backstory or anything at all, but he understands him and his appeal. And, I think it will continue. I think the policies could be somewhat different. Maybe they'd be more populist on economic issues. There's probably, a greater likelihood of the trying to reindustrialize America. I think on foreign policy, J.D. Vance is even more committed to Trump than being a non-interventionist. And I think, unlike Trump, he might stick to it. That's what's emerged during these past few months of internal arguments over Iran and other things, is that J.D. Vance is the voice of greatest restraint within the administration, I think, unlike a Marco Rubio.
Regarding the reindustrialization, what do you think happens next, especially with the context of a post-tariff U.S. and a post-higher restriction for immigration?
They just seem, the administration is very committed to these policies. Now, if what comes of these trade deals is that things are mostly the same, which it's hard to, the day-to-day change, sometimes like, oh, we're doing this percentage, then this percentage, it's just hard to know. Having more tariffs in place will hurt the economy, cause the price of things to go up, and cause Republicans to have a worse midterm performance than they would otherwise. So there could be electoral backlash. Same thing with the immigration. There's a major battle over what to prioritize in terms of deportations. For instance, Stephen Miller, he is the voice who wants, ICE agents in parking lots arresting everybody. Other people in the administration don't want to do that because they have limited resources and they want to prioritize, Tren de Aragua, which did take over an apartment complex where the media on that was like, no, that didn't happen. And you're like, it kind of did.
Happen,
exactly is what happened actually.
Yeah.
There are serious. So I think if they stay on task and they focus on just, every time they deport a violent criminal, that's great. Make a trade deal with people where they lower down their barriers and we lower our barriers to zero, and it's good. I think we're going to have some continued friction and fighting with the European Union on these topics.
On the immigration stuff, there's like a lot of, I don't know, like people like Schultz or Thiavan, even Rogan, who were all fully in support of anything Trump's immigration policies.
Yeah.
They are now coming up and saying that, no, this is going too far. My question is, like, do you think, because there's this argument of that they were useful idiots in Trump wanting to win over the 20-something guy who was otherwise agnostic of the plight of illegal immigration or what have you. What do you think is the postmortem of how Trump used the podcast election?
Well, I think he used it effectively to his advantage. I don't think people should be blamed. Like, this is not what I voted for. I mean, that's just how it works. Yeah. So you vote for someone and you hope you get what you hope they're going to do what you want. And sometimes they're going to, and sometimes they're not. That's not really a knock on them that they were this idea that they were useful idiots. I think they were very clear that they were happy with some level of deportation and not this. And that's how most people are. And Joe Rogan wants to convince Trump to not do as many of the deportations, and that's fine. That's just how politics work. It's like a zero-sum contest. Unfortunately, I don't like that it's this way, but there's another person. So for all of this, here's why people might be frustrated with Trump. Right now, the Democrats are represented by no one. There's no one who represents the Democrats. They have no leader. We don't know what their agenda is because we don't know who runs their party right now. So as far as overreach on any kind of front that Trump is doing, once it's decided whether it's Kamala Harris again or Gavin Newsom or whoever it is, Zohran Mamdani type AOC person, then we'll know what the politics of the opposition are. And then, Joe Rogan type people. I don't know. Maybe they'll say, I love this person and we're going back. More likely, they'll say, oh, no, that's radical. So I don't know. Maybe Andrew Schultz goes that. Be bad. He's been fighting with Portnoy over Mamdani. I totally agree with Portnoy on this. But so maybe they'll break. But it's like, it's easy to be thinking the right isn't executing everything perfectly when there's literally nothing on the other side to compare it against.
Last question, and speaking of right not executing something, Epstein.
Wow. Yeah, they fucked that up, didn't they?
They did, and my question is, for a lot of people, Epstein is an entrepoint to their distrust towards the establishment writ large, and Trump was a vehicle to voice that sentiment, and they right now feel let down. First of all, like, what do you think is going on? And secondarily, is that base actually upset with MAGA and Trump, or like most things, they would eventually forget and forgive Trump?
What if Trump is just correct about this? Which I'm this is not going to be popular to say, but I'm coming around to a little bit. I followed a lot of Michael Tracy's work on this subject, and it is true that a lot of the accusers are not credible or have recanted accusations that were not credible. Look, they screwed up. MAGA screwed up. The administration screwed up by promising information, by saying that there was going to be some Marvel cinematic universe of Epstein files releases was just shooting yourself in the foot. And people like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, who I like, I have nothing against Kash Patel. I like a lot of the reforms he wants to do, but promised really hardcore revelations and disclosures, and so it's really unsatisfying.
In their defense, they were not in the government when they did, but whatever.
Well, then I kind of want more of an explanation. I mean, Pam Bondi said, "Oh, it's sitting on my desk."
Bad. Yeah.
What's it? What's the it?
That's bad.
It was so bad, but I never thought there was going to be a list where it's like, here's everyone else who did the sex trafficking. Now, I think questions about how he got his initial deal, which was so unusually lenient. Jeffrey Epstein, sent to prison in the end of the aughts for sexual misconduct involving minors, prostitution, gets to come and go as he pleases from the jail. That it's weird.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm still not sufficiently satisfied that he was not providing something to our government or a foreign government. I think the intelligence asset idea is plausible and should continue. And I want more information on it. And that's what I hope our government would give us. Look, can you say explicitly this is not true, or can you tell us that it is the case? In terms of other people who are involved, I mean, it's just other people Epstein has met is in this information. Thousands of files of which have already been disclosed. Trump said when he was asked about this, Trump is not a hypocrite on this. Trump said when he was asked about this, yeah, I would disclose it if there's something to disclose. There's also probably just people who are named who didn't do anything, and you got to be careful because you don't want to ruin people's reputation. But it's not as important to me as other things. That's a literal line he said. It's not as important to me as other things, but we'll look at what we can do. That's what Trump's promise was.
Counter to that is that maybe he's saying that because he is in that list, which is
yes, he knew Epstein.
Yeah.
The Wall Street Journal says. Wrote him a beautiful, affectionate
letter,
birthday card that
what'd you make of the good old poem?
It was so odd. Yeah. It's just not the way
men talk to
it's
each
modeling
other.
Healthy masculinity. It's affirmatively non-toxic male friendship, the friendship between a man and a serial underage sexual abuser. Yeah. So that's not the kind of thing you want to see. Nobody wants to have that kind of thing surface. Now, he says he didn't write it. It's not true. It's false. He's suing the Wall Street Journal. The truth could be somewhere in the middle. The truth could be the Wall Street Journal is absolutely convinced he did write it. He had a secretary write it, and he doesn't remember. That could be the answer. It could be that both people are telling the truth. I don't know.
But how do you think the base kind of ties the knot around this?
I think he will force, over time, gradually, not all at once, he will force the base to move on from this issue. And it will be painful, and it will be like the hypocrisy of it will be called out over and over again. But he'll just grind him down, as he did with numerous conservative commentators, not never Trump ones, but, part and part, like strong conservative commentators on cable news, online, Republican members, cabinet appointees who all condemned him for January 6th. They don't do that anymore. He beat that tendency out of him. Now that's just a thing mainstream liberal never Trump people say. But at the time, he got criticized for it by even people on Fox and Newsmax and everybody. And now those people wouldn't dare bring that up again as a knock on Trump. No way.
And you think the Epstein of it all,
the same thing? That's my guess. I could be wrong.
Well, that's a good place to end, Robby. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Perfect.